Hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. This is Sidebar. And of course, we have got platforms galore for you to join on. So, in case you have told your friends and they haven't come on yet, we're on Facebook, X, YouTube, and Rumble. And we absolutely love, and I see already some people have joined, like Patricia and Nelta. Thank you so much. And we are going to be talking about some of the things that happened during the week. But of course, it's the 4th of July. Happy 250th. Before we start, I guess I have a question for both of you, and that is, how do you convince someone to love America after they have learned not to love America? And that seems to be maybe half of America.
Well, how do you convince anyone to love anybody? They have to get to know them. They have to appreciate them. They have to look at them with clear eyes and not any type of predetermined notions or things that they've already decided. And that's what, so when you say taught to hate America, not everybody will agree with this, but I think if you objectively look at what the narrative is about the United States, you're going to see that, there is a teaching, so to speak, or there's a promulgating of this hatred for this disdain for this country. It's like having, an abusive parent, an abusive dad. Well, yeah, they're my dad, but
yeah,
effing sucks, or whatever it is, and then you talk shit about them later on. You don't really have a true affinity for them because you don't have an appreciation. And if it's true, then I get it. But it's not true about this country. This country is an experiment. It's a set of ideas set forth by a group of people years ago that were trying to break away from a monarch, from a king, from control, from totalitarianism, so to speak, right? I mean, from just absolute control, from your thoughts, from your actions, to your worship, to what you do, to what you could earn, to what you could learn. I mean, everything. And that's what they were trying to break away from. And the irony is, and I think I can defend this objectively, that the people that don't like America or hate America, number one, are still here. But number two, they want to go back to that in a different form. They want to go back to the control, to no disagreement, to my way or the highway, to shut up, to cancel, to put their thumb on your neck and their foot in your face. I mean, that's what they want to go back to. And if you study the history objectively, again, forget about political parties. Because remember, when this country started, there were no political parties. George Washington warned against political parties. The first president of the United States, and his speech leaving office is more like a sermon than it was a speech. And you can read it. I mean, forget my opinion. Like Mark Antoine made a comment earlier, which I'm glad he watches, and I wish he would still take me up on that lunch, but he hasn't yet. But I mean, we just have to objectively look at these things. And George Washington warned against political parties. And I agree. I mean, I tend to agree with that, especially seeing where it's gone and how it's been tribalized. I use that word a lot, tribalized. It's been tribalized. You can't agree with it because then you don't talk about ideas. And even if your ideas suck, it doesn't matter. Your tribe pushed that idea forward, so it's my idea now. But it sucks. That's still my idea. The thing that comes to mind, since we have to look at tribes, is the open border issue and the men and women's sports. Those are two issues that even people on the Democrat side said, wait a minute, that idea sucks. I don't care if it's on my tribe. Don't make me... And then you lose people to the other tribe if you don't have an idea that you say, no, this has to be your idea. This has to be your idea. You run for office, these are your 7 tribal things you have to advocate for. And it doesn't, I mean, it's obviously not going to work. It seems like it's not going to work. Maybe it is if you train them up young enough and you're seeing this Democrat Socialists of America, winning certain primaries and primarying incumbents in the Democrat side. And if the Democrats are happy about that, then so be it. So you have to know what this country was about. So, sorry, long answer, Karen, to your question. But know what the ideas are about. What does it mean to pursue life, liberty, and happiness? What does that mean? It's not feeling-based. So you have to understand that. You have to really, truly study our founding fathers. Very flawed men, but brilliant. Very flawed men, but brilliant. I'm flawed. I'm not brilliant. I'll leave that to George. But they were brilliant. They were. Because we're celebrating the same Constitution with its amendments for 250 years.
It's incredible.
Well, but I mean, don't assume it's going to last 50 more years. Definitely not 250 more. And I'm not dooming and glooming everybody. It's kind of like sounding the alarm still, sounding the alarm, and making sure people understand that you only preserve something like this if you defend it and you understand what you're preserving. And so I'm going to leave and I'll pass it to George because I know we're going to talk about patriotism. Well, no, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait because I want to make a point. I want as many people to hear it as possible. Yeah. I'm going to wait.
And I don't want to be an alarmist either, but shall I tell our friend Dom that you're fizzing in and out of my
I know. Our headphones are kind of weird, but now they just got better right now.
When the voice of LaHood is fleeting here, and I don't like that. You're not born loving the country. It has to be taught, right? And I came from another country. And when I arrived here in 1977, I was taught to love the country, and I was taught to love the country in the curriculum that I read and was exposed to in elementary school right from the get-go. And from the get-go, I could see that America was a flawed country, just like human beings that are in America, just like Americans are. But I loved that the story was, and it's based on, and it's historical, that we prevailed against our darkest impulses. And we did so because our ideals aspired us to do so. That's why. And I love that. I love that that was ingrained in the fabric, the true DNA of the United States of America. And that's history that's no longer taught. And it wasn't that long ago. So this isn't ancient history here. But so what's happened? It's caused me to ask, what has happened in the last several decades? And that is that we don't do that anymore. Our kids are exposed not to education, but to indoctrination against their own country. They're taught only the darkness. They're not taught the light at all. They're not taught all the things that we've managed to achieve together, regardless of the various ethnic backgrounds of people that have come to America to be Americans. But it's divisive. They teach all the things that are wrong with America, all the mistakes that America's made. But the problem is that they teach that America is irredeemably racist, or that America is irredeemably sinful. And they talk about, they talk about, for instance, our history of discrimination of persons as if something that's never changed. Like it's only gotten worse over time. The reality, it hasn't gotten worse over time. It got a lot better. It's gotten worse in the age of Obama because those divisions were exploited. And so that's been fomented for political purposes. But the actual history of the United States is a beautiful history. It's truly a history of redemption. And our kids they're not exposed to that. And so they're exposed only to the darkness. And so they hate that darkness. And then they're told that, if they're white, they're the problem. So division all day long. And so now you have a Gallup study that comes out and says that this isn't, I'm not surprised, it's devastating, but I don't think it's surprising, that patriotism has never been at the low that it's been right now. And not surprisingly, it's divided among demographics. It's lowest among the young, particularly among Gen Z and then millennials, people who have been subjected to the type of indoctrination that I'm describing here over the last 30 years. You're talking about a huge split, like among parties. Republicans are extremely proud to be Americans by some 70% to 14%. Be extremely proud, 70 to 14 if you're a Democrat. And that 14 is the same number among Gen Z.
But if you would have asked those same groups, those same tribes during Obama's administration, it would have been reversed. I'm sure there were studies. Because this is my point. So American patriotism shouldn't be based off of who's in charge. It should be based off the ideas of the country. You understand my point? And I'll give you the example that I was going to make earlier. So thank you you're exactly right, George. But the World Cup. You know, so Zeiter loves soccer, and so I've been watching it with him. I'm not a huge soccer fan, but I've watched it with him. And you should hear the stories. I think George and I talked about this at one point during the week, or you brought it up maybe on R-Rated. Mm-hmm. You hear the stories of people visiting our country and just like
example.
Love our,
what's
that's great.
In the
You
world.
have no idea what you guys have here. Are you kidding me? This is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so excited about it. But then, and I am of Mexican ethnicity. I am Lebanese Mexican ethnicity, but I'm an American first. But I'm proud of my heritage. I'm proud of my ethnicity. I'm proud to be Lebanese Mexican ethnicity and the culture that comes along with it. And for all the flaws of the government of Mexico, for all its flaws, and for the reason, and those governmental flaws are many times the reason why people want to come over here from Mexico. But their patriotism and their pride of their country, second to none.
I know.
Second to none. So my wife shows me this video when because Mexico's historically they haven't lost yet. I mean they're doing great.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And, Zaita goes, Papi, what three countries am I cheering for? I think I can guess. The United States, yes. Yeah. Mexico, yes. And Argentina, yes, Papi. Is it that? So we're cheering them on.
Right.
But when Mexico won, you see this video of this kid, and I mean, he must have been 6. I don't know. Shit, I mean, you can never tell these days, but 6, 5, 6, 7 at the most. And he's screaming at the top of his lungs, crying, just bawling. And then there's another video of a guy who had to have been in his early 70s, sitting there wrapped in the Mexican flag, knowing that there's history on that face and his body, tearing up because Mexico has made history in the World Cup. This is pride. This is your. And are they proud of their government? No, because their government sucks.
Yeah,
they're not safe in that country. It's either you're rich, you're poor. There's no middle class. I mean, we know all the the criticisms of the Mexican government, but. And then there's corruption, all that crap. Sounds like America, by the way, right? But yet they're proud of their culture. They're proud of what Mexico represents to them, and
they're
their family.
united.
They're hammered. And I understand that there's a side to the Mexican culture, the machismo bullshit. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the family values, the unity, the togetherness. That's beautiful, not just in the Mexican culture. But when I saw that it was a collage of videos. I don't know if the collage is the right word, but whatever, clips of videos. And it was this kid, I mean, wrapped in the flag, and crying. Yeah. And then an older man, I mean, just standing there. His eyes just full of water, sitting there and nodding his head, not yelling, but just real, stoic. It was beautiful to watch. Yeah. And why don't we have that here?
Well, yeah. I think that we've seen an incredible, just a surge of patriotism as it pertains to the United States men's national team. I mean, I've loved seeing that. And I mean, the stands are just saturated with people, and you can just see the fervor. I mean, I love, as the United States won in their last game, you saw them as they kind of were on the field celebrating. I love John Denver's. Was it West Virginia? Take Me Home, West Virginia. I love that, and people, you could just feel it. It was palpable. So, Nico, I love that moment. I wish it was more than a moment. I wish it was pervasive. You made an interesting statement. I want to go back and check it for a moment. Yeah. In 2016, Donald Trump hadn't taken office yet. This is after Barack Obama, obviously. Barack Obama administration. As you mentioned, Republicans weren't exactly enthused because Obama had been in office. But if you look at this polling, Republicans were 68% extremely proud of the country, and Democrats were 45%.
Well, what I'm saying, but my point is, they were 14 now. All I'm saying is the Democrats are more proud when they're
no, fair enough. I thought
Republicans
you were saying
no, I didn't. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. Thank you for.
I wanted to clarify that.
No, all I'm saying is Republicans or conservatives in general. Look, Republicans suck too. we know. Yeah. But I'm saying, I'm talking a conservative person. What does conservatism mean? That's why I like talking about conservatives over Republicans. Conservatism means we're trying to hold something together. What are they trying to hold together? So what are they proud of? They're proud of the ideas.
No, that's exactly. I wanted to jump on your point about this fervor of that Mexican child who obviously it's a flawed country, deeply flawed country to say the least. But they love their country. And they love the ideals. They love the culture. There's things that are redeemable and wonderful about the culture. The point is that Republicans and Democrats at some point used to be able to come together on those things that were wonderful about the country. Yep. And it wasn't all about the divisions. And now it's all about the divisions. And it's deeply tribal. It's about one destroying the other. And it is, and I want to be, this is not a both sides argument. At the same time, it's not a commercial for Republicans. I'm very critical of Republicans on this show. Yeah. But there's no question that the ire and the disdain and the push for constant division is coming almost singularly from one party, and it's not the Republicans. And so it's appropriate to step back and say, put the party shit aside for a moment and look at ideology. Look at the worldview that's driving those parties. Look at the set of values that they esteem. Take those values now and then match them to what the values were of the country that both sides used to be able to align on, and you'll see there's a significant departure. He didn't use the word parties. He used factions. He was concerned about the factionalization of American government. He was right.
Well, Washington. He didn't realize. Exactly.
Parties because he was going to the root. Yeah. This idea of picking your faction, right? And then sort of burying your sword on that faction and forgetting about the higher ideals while we're even here. And so this is a huge clarion call to come back to those things.
But when I was growing up,
unite us.
And when I ran for office, and I ran under the Democrat platform, you guys know that. We talked about that before. And today, and I've done this with Mo on R-rated, but today, if you say this, you say pick a tribe, Karen, Star Spangled Banner, who would stand for that?
Republicans.
The American flag.
Republicans.
I mean, if you drive in a neighborhood, and everyone, if you're honest. If you're driving a neighborhood, Mark Antoine, Alamo Talk, I know Alamo, he'll agree with this, I believe, and other people, and you drive down a neighborhood and the houses that have an American flag,
flags.
not on 4th of July. Maybe that might be a little different today. I hope it's different today. But just throughout the year, you're going to say Republican, Democrat, Republican,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
just know. And that wasn't the way before. When I was growing up,
100%.
Democrats believed in law enforcement. Now, they wanted accountability. Democrats were pushing the border. And we're going to talk about this today. Harry Reid and the Democrats were against birthright citizenship. You can find the videos. Forget about Nico Lloyd's opinion. It's not my opinion. Democrats were against birthright citizenship.
Harry Reid entered a bill. In fact, Bernie Moreno came on the House floor and said, I'm going to submit a bill. This is actually happening right now. That Bernie Moreno has come on the House floor, I believe, and said, I am going to submit a bill that was originally submitted by Harry Reid in 1993 called the Immigration Stabilization Act, right?
Yep.
That basically said birthright citizenship was completely unacceptable and had a path forward for eliminating that. What happened? This was in 1993.
Well, and I always bring up Harry Clinton. Harry Clinton. I don't know if he's Harry or not, but Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton in 1995, when he's given his State of the Union address, when he said the greatest threat to this country is illegal immigration.
Yeah.
I mean, so those were ideas that the Democrat Party embraced. And they were right, and many Republicans did also. So that wasn't the shit we were arguing over. We weren't arguing over that kind of stuff. We weren't arguing over praying for our country and being proud of our country and patriotism and law enforcement and law and order and borders. We weren't and nobody was arguing over gender. Yeah. But now the tribes have gotten, and I think our founding fathers and George Washington would be rolling in his grave, that we're even politicizing combat. We're even we will tolerate something or not tolerate something based off our tribe because we don't want to agree with the other side. And it's more prevalent, to George's point, on the Democrats or the Republicans because they're more tribalistic in ideas. And on a whole, Republicans are more idealistic on ideas.
Yeah, and I want to just correct. I meant Senator Bernie Moreno from Ohio, not Representative Bernie Moreno, who has said that when he gets back to D.C., he's going to reintroduce that bill from Harry Reid.
Well, Harry Reid was a Democrat.
Indeed. And this was the 103rd Congress in 1993. It ended up never seeing the light of day. Both the House and the Senate.
Obama was against birthright citizenship. You can find the videos.
Allegedly.
Well, that's what he said. That's what
I was
said.
against it before I was for it.
Well, I mean, you can say that about anything that guy stood for. But I mean, I'm just saying because he's a chameleon. Look, I mean, a principle is a principle is a principle. And if an idea is principally based, it doesn't matter if the idea goes against me. It's a principle. So even if what I support is, and that's why I get so passionate about the due process, because there's many people, even on the conservative side, that are all for due process, all for this, all for that. I heard a podcast where this one guy was like, well, the grand jury indicted, who did they just recently indict? John Bolton and all these other people they were talking about. And I was like, man, now you agree with and you support and you trust the grand jury process so much because you sure as hell didn't support it when they indicted Donald Trump. Same process, different grand jury, of course, but same process. So I like to call people out to pause and let's just don't just support something when it supports your cause. Make it principally based.
For those of you who are listening, I pulled up the bill. It was meant to, quote, curb criminal activity by aliens. Again, this is Harry Reid, who later became a Speaker of the House, if you remember. He was majority leader, a Democrat majority leader, 103rd Congress, to curb criminal activity by aliens. He went on to say that he was going to defend the country against terrorism, protect American workers from unfair labor competition. Who's this sound? Is Trump in the House? Sounds a lot like him. Relieve pressure on public services by strengthening border security and stabilizing immigration. You'd never dream, just from the rhetoric today, and positions they take, you'd never dream that this was not only a Democrat, but a Democrat Speaker of the House who would later become so.
It's only 30 years ago. That's how quick shit changes.
Kelsey Grammer, the actor, has recently produced, or I don't know what it is, but he's put together a miniseries on the beginnings of our country. And he said that he didn't put it out to say, I'm MAGA. He didn't put it out to say, I'm Democratic. He said he put it out because he thinks that the division is so deep in America because people don't know the beginnings.
Of course.
They don't know the beginning of the story. And when you watch it, I don't care how many times I hear the story, watch a reenactment, Washington, like Jefferson, seeing their stories, and they were so young. They were just so young. And you're like, this had divine intervention. And for the young people in America to not know our beginnings, I think that's why they're so easily swayed.
And he's saying he's concerned that it's beyond repair.
He is, and that's why he's done this.
And so you got to step back and say, is this a person, Nico, who's just freaking out for no reason whatsoever? But the reality is this: the Democrat Socialists of America, which is really just a marketing term. It's a marketing term for communism. Yeah. It's a communist organization. And whether we like it or not, we talked about it last week and the week before, Nico, and the reality is that the faction inside the former Democrat Party that has the most momentum and power right now are the Democrat Socialists of America. If you don't believe that, you're not following along. Watch what's going on across the country, not just in New York, but it just recently happened, this week in Colorado. So what's going on? Well, that is pushed along by a worldview that is hell-bent on division. They want to demoralize. Nico walked through, and you should probably go through it again, Nico. Really, this sort of four-stage ideological subversion, exactly, and go through that. This is all part and parcel. It's part of the roadmap. They want to demoralize. They want Republicans. They want Americans to get to the point to say, what's the point? That this is just the way it is, and let's just accept it. That's what's at issue here, to get people to give up on what the country was and embrace a vision of the country that it was never meant to be. In fact, the ideals of the country were installed to resist the very direction that we're going in right now as a country. So I don't think Kelsey Grammer's off point here.
No, and look, my hope is in Jesus. So that's what keeps me fighting. But I'm not encouraged by it, and that's why I'm so critical of Donald Trump, and it's because I want him to do better, because I support him. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm so critical of the Republican Party, because I support the Republican Party as of now. Because if they lose their minds, I won't support. I'm not a Republican. I vote Republican. There's a difference. It's not my identity. That's why I don't care about the tribe, and that's why I don't mind disagreeing with, quote unquote, my side. I'm a Christian conservative, but that means something to me. But yet I don't fit the mold of what the world says a Christian conservative is, right? So when you look at Yuri Bezmenov, so here's what he's talking about. He was a defector. He was a KGB, right?
Former KGB operative.
Mm-hmm. And so in 1984, you can find it, and we've posted it before.
It's amazing.
And only because George asked me to repeat it again. He does this interview, and I love the videos where they clip out just this portion, because it's an hour or so long video that they posted, or that they recorded in 1984, ironically in 1984, by the way, George Orwell. So he says there's 4 stages to ideological subversion. Number 1, demoralization. You have to properly, it's almost like the way I describe it is tenderize the society. You tenderize the society by demoralizing them. Yeah, so now you're not so, now I can season you the way I want to season you. Sorry, it's the trial lawyer in me. But to demoralize a country, he says, under their plan, because there's an actual strategy to do this, it takes 15 to 20 years. Now, what's interesting in that video is Yuri says, in 1984, we are sufficiently demoralized in the United States. In 1984.
That's scary, yeah.
Okay, so to do the math. Then number 2, second stage of ideological subversion is destabilize. So now you've tenderized your society. Okay. Now you destabilize your society. He says it takes 2 to 5 years. I think now, because of social media and the way things move, it's much faster. He's talking about back then. That's economy. Foreign relations, defense systems, anything like that can COVID, anything can destabilize you. And now we have that. Then 3, crisis, kind of mixed. It fits with the destabilization. He says that can take only 6 weeks. We know today that takes 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Right, 6 minutes. So you have demoralization, tenderize, destabilize, kind of prep you for it. Then crisis, scare the shit out of you essentially. And then 4, normalize. How many times did we hear during COVID, hey, that's just the
new normal.
That's all it is. And he says, with a violent change in power often on this new normalization, this is all the protests George is talking about, and all these this and that, these movements that are being funded by whomever they're being funded by. And that can last indefinitely, this new normal, this normalization. Now this is the new normal. And so these kids growing up, they don't understand that. They don't understand. So our generation, I think, is kind of the last hope. Because we understood the old way of doing things. I mean, we grew up where there was no cell phones. We grew up where there was no page. I'm saying pagers. Pagers was a big deal when I was growing up. It's like, oh, you got a pager, someone can track you down. I mean, but they don't they have nothing to compare it to, and it has to be taught. And so that young boy, that little Mexican boy that was crying and screaming to support his country, which was because he was patriotic, because he loved his country. Didn't mean he loved his government. He loved his country. There's a difference. And he's crying, screaming at the top of his lungs. Was so beautiful to watch. But to your point, George, that was taught. And that was taught because he saw it. You know what I always say? Your children will follow your example long before they follow your advice. And so today we want to talk to people and scream at them and command them. Hey, shut the hell up. Just show them. You show them what a good marriage is. Show them what good friendship is. Show them what integrity is. Show them what honor is. Show them what grit is and perseverance is. Show them what humility is. Show them what toughness is. Show them what principles you stand by. Show them what you believe by living by it, not just in the easy times, in the hard times, right? There's so much here to this.
So that's the contrast, really. We're shifting from pride in the country, regardless of party, pride in the country, to propaganda about the country. So we used to be united by pride. Now we're divided by propaganda, and that's the point. And Bezmenov talked about how this is how you demoralize society,
That's right.
through propagandizing that society. I think he described it as a kind of unseen mechanism, this sort of invisible government, as he described it, that
deep state
that basically replaces all the ways in which we are bound and guided. I've heard it said that it controls what we think without us knowing that we are being controlled. And it's this pervasive narrative. And communists are very, very good at this. This is a critical step in their burning down the country. They don't actually build anything. Nothing follows except demise and poverty and misery. But they're very good at burning shit down.
But George, this is why I get so frustrated and why I've been so critical of President Trump and the Republicans. Because I'm going to keep saying this until the Lord calls me. I truly believe they've squandered God's grace. I just do. I mean, I'm telling you that's why. Because you know how you combat this bullshit? You have a white tent, and you don't let your opponent, identify you and describe you. You let the people that support you. It's all about the people. That's what this constitutional
But that
republic.
seems so final when you say that.
What
is there any way to go back?
Well, how did we get? What did you think that was going to happen before that? Those 4 years before? I mean, who would have known? I mean, of course it can happen again. Absolutely. Because when the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of changing, then you change. Pain is a good motivator.
I know, but when you talk about Trump and not being a true Christian or hasn't.
Oh, he's not a Christian. You know that. He's not
Okay,
saved.
so then how can he understand what you're talking about when he squandered?
I don't need him to understand. I just need him not to be a dick.
Yeah, but who's gonna tell him not to be?
Well, I mean, I don't know, someone around him, Susie Wiles, somebody, Marco Rubio. Did you see the new meme going around, Marco Rubio, because of that red card?
Yeah.
And he's there in the American. He's sitting in the room, and he's in the United States uniform. Like, get in there, Marco. Go take care of this one too. But it's somebody needs to tell him.
But you're saying, I mean, okay, so he's a dick now. He doesn't have to stay a dick.
No,
right?
that's
You can
right.
always change. You can always be hopeful. We just want to be absolutely clear that he's been kind of a shitty steward. There's been a lot of wonderful things that have happened in 18 months, but I feel like nobody knows about them.
Right. Say it, George. Keep going
because the big things have taken front and center attention. Like the Iran war, I'm so frustrated. Not by the fact that we went into the war, but by how it was stewarded. It was stewarded poorly. Had great momentum. He was checking off critical boxes. Truly degrading, to use Obama's famous term. We're not actually destroying our enemies. We just degrade them, whatever the hell that means. But we actually were degrading their capabilities, right? We truly were. We could see measurable improvements in what was happening in Iran in terms of lowering or destroying the power of the IRGC. And so he should have kept that pressure up. But, I mean, Americans didn't like the war, but they seem to recognize the moral basis for the war.
Right.
And so I think people were hanging in there with him. He set expectations for 4 to 6 weeks. That was
4 to 6 weeks.
So
that was just
nobody
the intro.
believed.
that was part of the problem. So people got out their alarm on their iPhone and said, "I'm going to set this to 4 weeks," and it didn't happen in 5 weeks and in 6 weeks.
But he set he set that expectation.
He did, and
He
it just
wanted it to happen,
And then he
but-
seemed to kind of pull back from what seemed to be an absolute commitment to victory. You can't do that. You just simply can't. Not with these people in Iran. Are you kidding me?
Look.
So he took the foot off the accelerator at the wrong time. Then we have this non-fire ceasing ceasefire that went on for like some 78 or 80 days, and then nothing happened. But basically every day people shooting at each other. But it's a ceasefire. They really want to come to the table, but they didn't. They really are desperate for the deal, but it's obvious they weren't. We degraded all their missile capabilities until an Apache helicopter got shot down by drones. I think that's right. And on and on. Just which is it? And I felt like Trump lost a lot of momentum that he desperately needed.
Yep.
The country needed. And his credibility, I think, for the first time, I think was shot in terms of his willingness to go to the enemy and take it to the enemy, then people are like, wait a minute, what's going on with
just
Trump?
This morning, they're reporting Iran warns U.S. and Israel ahead of that.
But that's the media.
It was all predictable.
But it's consistent. And then, but yet at the same time, Trump is talking about they're dying to settle. No, they're not. They're willing to die to not settle.
How can you stop a man? And I get it.
Which man?
Trump.
Okay.
How can you stop a man who wants to change the things that cannot be changed?
What do you mean?
Iran and their bargaining table. Everybody,
no, Karen,
but him.
We're agreeing with that. We George and I both we disagree on a lot of things, but we agree on this. We agree that we should have gone in. I understand the ideology of Islam, and that's a whole different deal. We had already Christianity talking about that with Pastor David Cameron on Wednesday, and we're going to continue to talk about it because you're going to continue to see this. And again, the people that hate conservatives are Republicans or don't like them, maybe not hate, whatever, are going to support that just to spite. That's it. And it's going to spite their own nose is what it really is. And all I'm saying is he should have gone in there. And that's right. He either got crappy advice, which we know he did. He didn't have an exit plan, or he completely miscalculated this deal. All of it, and all three could be true at the same time. And then you put in his natural humanistic flaws of just saying it's this and overselling and all this other crap, and now he's having to change his tune. He's lost credibility, and even though supporters, you just got to call balls and strikes. Yeah. That's it. You're never going to move the needle and bring someone in if you don't be honest about it.
And that's the rub. It's not that he went into the war; it's the lack of credibility then thereafter and how he executed the war after about the first 30 days. And I think we can't afford to lose credibility. We have a party that's got the franchise on the loss of credibility. They're proud of it, but we're not. We're not proud of being. We want people to know that when the party says something, that we're going to follow through. That's just an important principle, and so I'm worried that Trump has sort of blurred in the background to be part of the machinery that he said he was going to change. You see that?
Yes.
I don't want him. I don't want him to be judged that way.
Look at this. And JD's going to get it too now. So you got death to America chants during the Ayatollah's funeral, right? And then criticism all over the place. Well done, JD Vance. What a great deal you made with the devil, with a regime that hates and plans to destroy not just Israel but Western civilization. Right. But why? Why were we so critical of that? Because part of this agreement to hopefully come to an agreement was give them money. We released it because they were so focused on that strait that he said they could take and control no matter whether they wanted to or not, which wasn't true. It just wasn't true. They have they have the ultimate weapon against us, and it's called the Strait of Hormuz. And so these people were given money just on the promise, and a bullshit promise, that we'll try to negotiate. Not that we have a deal. We don't have a deal. And that's why everybody lost their shit over that stupid agreement to release money. The thing you had over someone's head, you're bargaining. That's what I'm saying. I don't understand. If
that's why there's no excuse.
A lost chapter of the art of the deal or the art of the non-deal is you don't release the thing you have over your opponent. If you know that money and they were being economically strangled, and they were, by the way, that was working, although the ceasefire shouldn't have happened, because you had this bombing that was happening, and you had this double malachi crunch.
We cut off their access to revenue.
But both.
It was absolutely brilliant. It should have stayed on. I realize there was a lot of bitching. There's always propagandizing coming from the global media. That's true. But all that should have been baked into what was expected. The Strait of Hormuz, are you kidding me? It was always going to be about the Strait. It always has been about the Strait. He's been critical for decades about what other presidents have done and how sheepish they've been because they seem to not have been ready for the Strait of Hormuz issue. So he should have known that. It seems to me his military leaders should have had some plan to destroy Iran's capability to control the Strait of Hormuz. If that was never in question. So this has all been very perplexing. I'm concerned that he's lost credibility. I don't think it's irredeemable. I don't think this automatically translates to a loss in the midterms. I've been worried about that.
I hope not.
I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I think there's been some great signs. I firmly believe we're going to retain the Senate. I do believe that. I think it's just a crushing uphill march for the Democrats in terms of retaining the Senate. On the fence about the House. And so, but it shouldn't be that way.
George,
we should
I
be
hope
way
you're right.
out
I
ahead.
so hope you're right. I hope you're right.
It's just basic math, Nico. So 47 there's 47 Democrats in the Senate. There's 53 Republicans in the Senate. Basically, the Democrats need to not only win They literally need to win to keep every single seat they now have, all 47, and gain 4 more. And the map it's just simply not there. All the polling's against them. Even James Neighbors with a uterus, Tallarico, even he's deeply, deeply struggling. The one poll that had him, quote unquote, ahead of Paxton, that poll now has him behind, and every other poll has him behind Paxton. So, I mean, I think as he talks more, as he kind of betrays the bullshit more, I think people are going to see.
What Paxton needs to do is just bring up the Democrats, Socialists of America crap against him. Because that's the party, continuously. Yeah. And Howdy Doody can't, because he doesn't have good ideas.
And talk in terms of communism. By the way, the head of the DSA says they're communists.
God.
So if they're telling you they're communists.
They're communists.
They're communists.
By the way, in Tehran, they're yelling, declaring death to America, blood feud with the U.S. What a great deal we have.
Because they're desperate. Because they're desperate for a deal. Okay.
Okay, listen.
Sorry,
Eddie
Karen.
Mato says the lack of credibility is created by the media. Only Trump and the inner circle know the truth.
Now hold on. The lack of
Eddie,
credibility,
brother,
the lack of credibility is exploited by the media, but it's not created by the media.
There you go.
Trump left them an open door, and they walk through. What do you think they're going to do, Eddie? You know that. So the media is going to exploit any vulnerability or weakness, and all we're saying is, why give them that? So Trump committed an unforced error. And I don't pretend to know everything that Trump did. I don't. We know that the President of the United States is privy to information that we don't have. We're simply operating on what we read from conservative and left wing sources. I get it. We try to do a comprehensive analysis of reality based on everything that we read, and we know it's not everything the president knows. Still, it doesn't make sense that you keep saying the opposite of what's obviously happening. And people at some point, Eddie, are not going to forgive the president for that. We give him a lot of slack because sometimes we think he's playing 4D chess.
That's what we keep hearing.
And he's just playing games. We get it. We want to give him a lot of slack because he's trying to sort of what do you say? Playing games, sort of play with their minds. All that. Maybe he's doing that. Maybe he's jerking them around. I don't doubt that. But at some point, after 45 days, what you're saying is happening obviously isn't happening. At some people at some point are going to wonder if you're delusional or if you're being deliberately deceptive.
Okay, so you say the media has exploited the information about Iran, but let me just bring up and change subjects if you don't mind.
Let us.
So then does Trump lose credibility when it comes to the Supreme Court decision on birthright citizenship?
I'll let Nico kick that off, but I don't think so. I don't think that's a loss of credibility. I think it's a valiant, important fight that needs to continue. Talk more about that, Nico, because it ended up at a 5-4 decision. I think that itself is telling.
Is it over? Is that the end? Can we do anything to change it?
No. Without a constitutional amendment, no.
Can states do anything?
No.
You need a constitutional convention or constitutional
And can
amendment,
that
which
happen?
requires.
Can it happen? Sure.
Will it happen?
This was just for some posture behind this, procedural posture, but also factual background. Barber versus Trump, right? So you had this is to define birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment, and honestly, in the past, Trump said, I don't know. So he issued an executive order. An executive order, as we all know, is not law, but it's really how the president will enforce a law and do things. So a challenge was brought by people that would be affected by this and were excluded under the executive order. The primary question that the Supreme Court, this is important, is people born under the 14th Amendment, people born in the United States, were they subject to the jurisdiction there too? That's the question. And they have to look at the history, they have to look at what was the intent of the Constitution at the time. It was a 5-4 decision, so two quote-unquote conservatives, and I have an opinion about that, Barrett and Kavanaugh. And Kavanaugh really didn't side with them. He wasn't agreeing with them. He was trying to kick it back to Congress, but then screwed up, and here we have this. And then Roberts, we know, this is a classic Roberts decision. Let's just keep the status quo, and he didn't want to change anything. And so the bottom line about this decision is that if you make it to the United States by any means, lie, or whatever you want to say, you lie, you get here, you cheat your way in here. You
hate America.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And you have children born here, that they're United States citizens for now. And so you had this dissent by Thomas. You had the majority opinion written, what they were saying and their definitions of this, and you have this historical posture behind that. And Thomas does a great job explaining that. And look, I think if you look at this, and George, you can fact check me because someone sent me this, and I don't know if this is true because I didn't have time to look at it. But Thomas makes not this part. This part I know is true. Thomas makes the point that the 14th Amendment and that clause in the 14th Amendment was for people that were freed under slavery.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they're slaves. Yeah. They weren't looked at as citizens. And they're saying, look, they were born here. These people are American citizens. They're free. That was the intent.
The Civil War ended in 1865. It was passed in 1866, ratified in 1868 to give slaves equal rights.
That's right.
Period.
But this is the part that I want to ask you about, George. You're a historian here. Allegedly, the author of this clause in the 14th Amendment, Senator Jacob Howard, have you heard about that dude? He explained, there was debates over this, and he explained that they would obviously not apply to foreigners not loyal to the U.S. And the quote is, this will not include aliens, foreigners who belong to ambassadors. So it's not a question of what he meant by it. I mean, is that correct? Can that be confirmed?
Can be confirmed.
Okay,
It is confirmed.
Well, then we know exactly what they meant by it, at least what the person who proposed it, Senator Howard, meant by it, and what everybody agreed to what it meant. So this is not ambiguous. We know what it meant, and it makes sense. But for them to redefine this, this has become, if you really look at this has become the Roe v. Wade of our time. And this is going to take decades.
Yes.
This is not about statutory interpretation. This is going to be the question. You watch. Moving forward on these appointment of judges and these federal judges, this question is going to be asked. Barber versus Trump. Where do you stand on it? Do you think that was properly, decided? And that's going to be the question. Before it was Roe v. Wade, now it's going to be this for decades. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. I'm not. But this is going to cause tremendous damage to this country. Think about that, Karen.
I think about it all the time, and it seemed like such a simple decision.
So then what do you do?
That's why
now you know what you do? You want a visa? You take a pregnancy test.
Yeah.
Is that where we go? And then now your visa only lasts for a month. You can only be here for 2 months instead of 6 months. Because now they're 6 months and you have to redo them and you have to take track of them. Is that where we go? Because who thinks it's a good idea that anybody can come visit or even come here illegally, have a kid, then they're American citizens, take them back to a country that hates us, teach them to hate the country even more.
Reinforces their hatred.
Not acclimate to a country, not assimilate to the country, not even love the ideas of the country or even know what the ideas of the countries are, and then bring them back to do whatever they're going to do here. And then now they can run for office and be, president of the United States potentially. So I just think it was a horrible decision, not because of my tribe, because of what Harry Reid said. How about that? And he's not in my tribe. What Harry Reid said, what Obama used to advocate, I don't know if he meant it or not, but that's between him, his conscience, and God. But I agree with Harry Reid and President Obama before he changed. How about that? Because their advocacy is my advocacy. How about that? I'll leave it at that. I think it was a horrible decision.
Horrible is not a strong enough word, but yeah, it just...
devastating is really what it is.
Truly was. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think that constitutionally it is a very big problem. And this is the problem. They ruled on it constitutionally. They didn't rule on it statutorily.
Yes, talk about that.
What does that mean?
What that means is when you rule on it constitutionally, you've established, basically ratified constitutional precedent. And so now it becomes a constitutional issue. And so to actually change it at that level, it's got to come before the court again somehow. What are the chances of that happening anytime soon? Look, Roe v. Wade, it falls categorically in the same, really sort of in the same sphere of consideration. 1973, it was passed. It was finally, literally almost 50 years in 22. They finally decided, this is really bad law. Right? And what was the basis of Roe v. Wade? The court decided that a woman's right to privacy prevailed against a state's need or ability to control abortion. Think about that. The conclusion of that is that you can privately commit murder. That's absurd.
That's not a hyperbolic statement George is saying. And this is what I've always challenged people. I guess we're supposed to talk about this briefly.
It's an absurdity.
Well, but it's a factually true statement. Why? Because I cannot think of, now, depending on what the punishment is, I can't think of a state, and there may be one, that doesn't look at the murder of a pregnant woman as a capital offense or equivalent to the capital offense in their state. So in Texas, under the Texas Penal Code, I don't make a Christian argument. I don't make a Republican argument. I just make a statutory argument. Under the Texas Penal Code, under murder, if you murder a woman that's pregnant, some people say, because you murdered 2 people. Okay, so you're saying the child in the mom's womb is a person. But what the statute says is you murdered a child under 10. A child in a mommy's womb under the Texas Penal Code is a child under 10. And if you murder a child under 10 years old, that's capital murder, by the way. You can face the death penalty in Texas. So that's a definition. The Penal Code, not my pastor. The Penal Code, not my savior. The Penal Code says. So if we just want to separate all that stuff, Republican, Democrat, that's the Penal Code. That's what it is. So now what you do with that, and whether you offer life in prison or you plead down to a murder charge, 5 to 99, or you go for the death penalty, it's still the truth. There's a child in that woman's body, and the penal code, the objective penal code, recognizes a child in their body. I'm sorry, George, I just want to make that point.
No, I was going to say that's an example of shady law that controlled American perspective, federal perspective on abortions for 50 years. See, it takes a while. This isn't something you just sort of willy-nilly change. And there's been a history of that. Dred Scott always comes to mind in 1857, the ridiculous ruling under Taney, the Chief Justice Taney, that basically said that black Americans were not considered citizens. Yep. And they weren't considered citizens because they were property. In fact, he came out and said that that the right to property in a slave was distinctly and expressly protected by the Constitution of the United States.
What year was that?
1857. So it basically said that black persons were not citizens. But that's because they're property. That's the United States Supreme Court in a 7-2 ruling in 1857. Wow. You basically ensured that you were going to have a civil war. I mean, because it's so gross. Immoral, okay, and grossly unconstitutional, but then to call it distinctly and expressly constitutional that the right to property exists in owning a slave. So if you're an enslaver, the Constitution protects you seeing that slave as property. It's gross. So and on and on and on. So there's just been these moments in history where it took literally turning the world upside down to change something constitutionally. It shouldn't be that way, but that's where we are. I want to point out, and then I'll shut up on this. It occurs to me in Elk v. Wilkins, Nico, in 1884. This is just to make the contrast between Native Americans of the United States United States.
Exactly what I was going to ask you about.
Well, think about how absurd this is. Now I'll throw it over to Nico because I can weigh in on it. In Elk v. Wilkins, the court said in 1884 that Native Americans were not entitled to birthright citizenship, okay, because their allegiance, Nico, was to the tribe. So this is Native Americans who have been here hundreds of years. We're born here, right? The court said that. They were not entitled to birthright citizenship because their allegiance is to the tribe and not the United States. They were subject to the jurisdiction of the tribe. It's an allegiance issue. It's not a soil issue. And then Congress, 50 years later, in 1984, reversed it statutorily. So constitutionally, it's never been changed. To my knowledge, there's never been a constitutional overruling of the courts. But Congress, and so this is why I think Kavanaugh, had a point. And that's why I think this is...
Yeah, but his ruling decided... I mean, he's maybe right about that, but his ruling, his decision...
Yeah, saying they were constitutionally right, but only because of precedent, see. And the problem is, you're right, I think he's wrong, because that hasn't been the way it was presently. They failed to take into account, both Barrett and Roberts, the history and the text, which is gross. So Barrett considers herself an originalist. I can't believe she was a clerk under Scalia. It's stunning to me. She considers herself an originalist, Nico. But what good is originalism if it's detached from the sovereignty it's meant to protect?
I can't help but think this, and I don't know if I'm right about this. I think there's a lot of factors playing on Kavanaugh and Barrett. Barrett has adopted a number of children, which I think is wonderful, okay? But they're not from this country, right? Or they're not, they don't look like her. I don't know if that plays in her mind that she has to defend them. I think, too, that I think the threats and the way that this tribalistic bullshit political environment we've allowed to happen, it plays on Kavanaugh. I know it has to. I mean, he had an assassination attempt that didn't come to fruition, thankfully. But I mean, someone wanted to kill him. I know what that feels like in the sense of people threatening this and that, whatever. I mean, it's unnerving if you don't have a certain.
So you're saying there are other factors at play other than their commitment to.
A lot of people think that.
I think that's my opinion because it's this. I don't want. I'm trying to appease certain issues. I think Barrett, it's personal. I think she struggles with something there. But again, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I have to think because these are not conservative or constitutional decisions they're making on some of these decisions. But then with Kavanaugh, I just can't help but think that he just was beaten into submission. I mean, this is what happens in communism. You don't care about the principle, you worry about your ass. And then there's threats. And look, if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be wrong. I just think that that's some factor in there because this wishy-washiness on something as serious as this and as constitutionally, I think sound as this, with precedent, by the way. When you look at the senator that actually submitted the clause, when you look at the way it's been interpreted, when you look at the intent, and you look at the culture of the time, because you have to look at that context of what was going on at the time.
Of course.
They weren't talking about today.
I mean,
No
the
one's even
idea
thought
that a
about
foreigner can come, think about that. So if you're an illegal alien, you happen to be 9 months pregnant, and you give birth here, that child has immediate access, has all the rights and privileges that any American that's been here. So multi-generational Americans who have fought for this country, okay, for the future of the country, who have toiled here, who sow into the resources of the country, the exact same right. That's an absurdity on its face. The idea that a foreigner can come here who hates the country, the child of a terrorist, automatically a citizen. So this is what birth tourism comes in. This is a serious problem right now.
Yep.
So you literally have right now, the Wall Street Journal put a piece out this week that said that Chinese billionaires are paying women here to have children for them who will then go back to China, learn how to hate the country so that they can come back to this country and, listen to me, potentially become president of the United States. Because they're an American citizen. What, the fact that they spent time in China? They can't be... Think about what we're saying here.
Think about it.
This is insane. This is national suicide, and at the root of it is cultural fragmentation. That's what's happening here. You're bringing people into the country who have no allegiance to the country. In fact, many of them hate the country.
And this is why I said a long time
but
ago.
Have the same rights and privileges
as much as I respect, and as mentioned many times I've agreed with Thomas and Alito, they're older. I think they should have been replaced strategically with true conservatives, not Barrett and Kavanaugh conservatives. But at least, look, and the whole thing about Supreme Court justices being lifetime appointees is so they don't fall for this tribalistic political bullshit. That's why. That, I'm going to be replaced by the next president or this. And they're supposed to be loyal to the Constitution. It's apolitical. It's supposed to be nonpartisan. Yes, you're appointed by the president or the party that's in charge at the time, but Congress has to agree to you. All I'm saying, affirm you. But that's the whole idea behind it. But now it's become so political. I mean, look, when's the last time Sotomayor or Jackson or Kagan or whatever agreed with Alito? I mean, there's some things, there's some 9-0 decisions on stuff that's no-brainers. And this whole men and women sport, people are like, oh, we got some of them. That's such a low-hanging fruit. That's not even a win. I shouldn't even come up to the Supreme Court. Right. It's disgusting and embarrassing as a country that it had to go to the Supreme Court. And it still wasn't 9-0. So you're going to tell me that that wasn't a win? That was it shouldn't even gone in the first place. So that's how we're trained. We're trained to think that the Supreme Court, not unanimously, saying that a dude with a dick cannot beat the crap out of a woman in a sport, that's a win for this country.
Yeah.
Well, having Ketanji Brown Jackson, though, and her word salad, it makes me think about the whole Supreme Court.
Well, the three women, they're ideologues and whatever helps the party. I mean,
I thought she didn't know what a woman was.
Oh, it's okay. She'll
get to vote.
If it would help the Democrat Party, she'd remember in a flash. Don't worry. I want to point out that this isn't the end of the world. Constitutionally, this is a huge barrier. But the reality here's this. Here's what I think is ironic, Nico. Trump. The solution is statutory, but even before the Congress, because to bring Congress together on something like this is going to be an act of God. So ultimately, at the end of the day, this comes down to Department of Justice. It does come down to immigrations and border enforcement.
For now.
Well, let's play this out. Trump promised. He promised mass deportations. That is the answer. Every resource in ICE and Department of Justice needs to be focused on that. You avoid birthright citizenship by preventing it to begin with. That's how. And mass deportations is the only answer. And you focus on illegal aliens who are expectant parents who already have children. And I know you're listening to me right now and you're thinking, that sounds very... Okay, I'm sorry. You're going to have to set that aside for a moment here. You can't be thinking about the illegal party. You have to think about the damage that they are exacting on people who are innocent, which is the American citizen. It is grossly unjust that people who are Americans are not being asked for permission for these people to come in here and become citizens.
But George, make it personal. And make it personal. Whenever I'd have a discussion with somebody, and it's not a one-for-one, but it's an idea, it's a principle. That's like someone saying that someone criminally trespasses on your property or burglarizes your habitation, burglary of habitation, and makes it inside your property or inside your home, and then somehow they have some right to your home. Even if you kick them out, they have some right. Now they have to take you to court. They can take you to court and have a claim on your house or some part of your property or a tent in your backyard, or they can build a little casita in your backyard or in your front yard. Forget your backyard, anywhere. As long as they make it on your property, anyway, by lie, cheating, or stealing, getting on your property, they have a claim, and you have clout on title. You can't even sell your property without checking with them first. I mean, I just got to make it personal.
And that would be outrageous.
Well, people would say, "Oh, that's not the way." Yes,
exactly.
that is a similar analysis. It is because that's your home. You've toiled for it. You can do legally what you want with it. And if somebody just lies, cheats, or steals to get on your property, they have a legal claim. That's what's happening. You get lie, cheat, and steal to get on this country. In this country, you have a child. They have a claim in this country.
I think that's a perfect analogy, and the answer is prevention. You don't let them come into your living room right at the front door. In fact, even at the beginning of your property, get off my fucking property.
Yep.
You don't belong here, with all due respect. And if I say you can come in because this is my property, then it's okay.
But the people that are happy about this decision, they don't want that.
Of course not.
I bring that up for my friends that think they like this decision. They think they like this decision until they lose the job opportunity, until something happens to their loved one by someone who is not assimilated to this country, someone doesn't look at women a certain way. Look, we're having, these sexual assaults and knife attacks and all this stuff. When you look at people, some of the atrocious things that are happening in Europe.
Yeah.
Are insane.
Who is now starting to consider mass deportation finally, maybe a day late and far more than $1 short. Look, remember, Trump campaigned on this. And he was overwhelmingly put over the top because of this. Trump used mass deportation. He talked in those terms. People didn't shy away from Trump. They recognized at a certain level. Here's the problem, and this is again about squandering grace, being a poor steward. He gets out there, they're mass deporting, they're in Minnesota. What does he think is going to happen? This is as blue as it gets, okay? The city is Marxist in terms of its influence. There's a massive propaganda campaign. There's almost zero communication strategy to go along with what he's doing. So then he's colored as this racist president with a racist Gestapo-like ICE. That's how it's colored. That's how it's pictured, right? He didn't like the optics. They backed off. I've heard nothing about mass deportation since then. We need to get back to that. That is the only solution. The way you stop birthright citizenship, if this is going to happen to the Supreme Court, is by stopping it before it happens.
But you have to win elections. This is why I get so irritated with Trump.
Well, he's won an election. Be a good steward of the election that you won.
But for now, that's short. I'm not saying you're doing this. That's short-sighted, and that's why I criticize a lot of people that I agree with probably politically that Trump won as if that was the goal. No, that's just the beginning. That's not the end. We have not arrived. Are you kidding me? Like someone gives their life to Christ, they're not arrived. You continue to sanctify yourself and live out and pursue Christ and learn and whatever, and then spread the gospel and try to, share with other people. I'm making an analogy as a Christian, but this is not. That wasn't the goal. Trump winning. That was the beginning. That was the breather. That was the, oh my God, thank God. And your tent was wide, and you had all this. And now, tactically, I think he mishandled a lot of things we talked about.
And to be fair, Trump, they're way off in terms of their mass deportation agenda. Okay, I think an unforced error. But they need to get back on that. But it's not just Trump. It's Republicans. Where's the persistence and the commitment to the SAVE Act? Because at root, it addresses this issue. Not allowing any illegality as it pertains to elections. So these people come into the country and then they become voting citizens through a bunch of illegality here. The SAVE Act addresses that. Where have Republicans been? Seriously, Trump's not only off target, but what about Republicans who are enabling illegal aliens and birthright citizenship? Look, there's a lot. And if you peel back the layers here, you've got sanctuary farms and factories and industrial hubs that would produce massive arrests and deportations. So I'm not talking about deporting one person at a time. But yes, that's right. You do show up at massive industry and job hubs and arrest illegal aliens by the hundreds. Yes, that's exactly right.
Susan
by the
said
hundreds.
That she just read an article that DHS is now deporting over 3,000 a day. She said the article came out a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I guess. From your mouth.
Here's my concern though, the overreaction, because you've been called out because oh shit, I let up the gas. So if you're supposed to be driving faster to get to your destination, but you've let off because you're afraid, and then you're like oh shit, I've lost a lot of ground. So then you punch it, you can lose control and you crash. That's my concern. Then now we're going to overcorrect, and now you're going to give fodder to the other side to really criticize. Because in the end, you don't win the next election. It doesn't matter what you do now. That's great. You can let's say theoretically you can deport all of them. Theoretically, it can't happen, but you can deport everybody here illegally. Everyone who's here. All it takes is to lose the next election, and then especially the next election, and they're all coming back in droves. So, I mean, it doesn't, this is short-sighted. We have to continue with, not you, George, but we have to think long-term, a strategy. And that's why the tent expanding, ideas flourishing, people agreeing, bringing people in, not people wanting to cancel their, I just get frustrated.
I'm not suggesting a repeat of Minnesota. I'm saying there's got to be a communication strategy. Look, we had a freaking coronavirus task force that was worth exactly piss during COVID, that was filled with actual misinformation, but lots of money and time and lots of press time and all that. We need something similar for something this big. Enforcement at high density, physical locations.
You think he's going to do that, George, right now, so close to the midterms?
Well, I don't know if he'll do it close to the midterms.
Well, that's my point. I mean, there's so many factors in here. He's thinking, so Iran's blown up in his face. I mean, their death to America, that's not going to happen.
I think there is a possibility of that, Nico, only because it remains very, very popular. That's the point. It remains popular, and it's something that we need, just like the SAVE Act. Ridiculously popular, something that we need, but who's stopping it? And this is what fucking irritates the hell out of me. It's not just Trump. We expect communists to be communists on the Democrat side, but Republicans, there's a level of cynicism and duplicity that drives me fucking crazy. It makes me sick. The reality is that this isn't happening at the necessary scale because you have special interest lobbies that are supporting industries that are major backers to the Republican Party. That's why this shit doesn't get the light of day. It's not just Trump, okay, and the fact that he's Trump. It's Republicans who are committed to this industry. Let's get it right.
What you guys, like, what backers are you talking about?
I mean, this is the United States Senate. You can't be bothered. What I'm saying is that
what backers are of the Republican Party that you're saying they don't want to get sideways with? What backers?
I'm talking about industries that rely heavily on low wage labor, low wage labor. That's what I'm talking about, and that's why I'm saying you don't go to a small business where there may be an illegal alien. I'm talking about massive industries, perhaps even massive hotel industries. Housekeeping industries where there are not 5, but 500. And the reality is these are jobs that Americans would want. I don't agree, well, Americans don't want the jobs. It's not true. There are plenty of Americans that want them, particularly young Americans that want them, but can't find work. And so what about them? And so when people think about those poor families now that got to go back to their native countries, yes, so what? With all due respect, what about our own kids? It's back to the analogy that you said.
Nobody says that when someone breaks into your house.
That's my point. Nobody says that. Why is that?
Nobody says that when they break in. If I had a debate with a buddy of mine, and he was just like, and I said, okay, so you go on vacation because you can afford to go on vacation. Good for you. And then you get home and you find a family of 6 because you went on vacation for 2 weeks. A family of 6, 2 parents and 4 children that have taken over your house. What would you do?
Poor them.
Would you say, "Oh, I don't want to"? You wouldn't care if they separated them from their kids. Because they'd be arrested, and the kids would go to CPS or some type of child care facility for temporary, and then they'd go to jail if they couldn't make bond. They wouldn't get out of jail until their court date. You wouldn't give a shit. You wouldn't say like, "Okay, well, I'll take the guest room," or "Can you move to the guest room?" Or you wouldn't say any of that stuff. You wouldn't care.
No.
I mean, so I try to personalize the argument when people try to support this crap because they don't feel it.
Right.
No, but play it out, because if you let them in because you're being nice, what do you think they're going to do to the food in your fridge?
Well, that's what, yeah.
At some point, and they start procreating and breeding in your home, who do you think is going to have the say at some point? And this is what Republicans don't think about. It ties back to Republicans. As far as I know, there's no special interest lobby for the parents of anchor babies that fund Republican elections. Republicans don't play it out. So they want the cash up front, and they don't care that they're committing national suicide on the back end because these people are never going to vote for them.
Never.
They're not on board, man. They're not here to be Americans, okay? They don't care about your conservative principles, but by the way, you don't live by. And this is why people are so disgusted with voting for Republicans, even as they hold their nose, because they know they sound very American, very committed to constitutional order. They sound very conservative until they get in office. This is why John Cornyn was thrown out on his fat ass. This is why, right here on this issue. Because they know he's full of shit. He was the best for a while, and then it's just not good enough because the best is nothing better than status quo. That's why Paxton was for all his faults. One of his faults is not, hey, I say I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do it. Paxton has been very, very consistent, and that's what people want. They want that kind of clarity. And so we need to step back and say, go ahead and blame Trump. Yeah, the communists do what the communists do, but step back and consider that your elected representatives, okay, are pulling the wool over your eyes, and it's time to hold. Not all of them. There's some guys that are dedicated to doing the right thing, but the John Thune ilk has done a lot of damage to this country, and apparently they're not done yet.
George, you're so angry on the 4th of
I am
July.
angry.
What's the matter?
I am angry about this.
We really should wrap up. People are starting to say, okay, we got to go to our parade and eat a hot dog. But the Republican Party has a path, and that is Rubio and J.D. Vance. What are we seeing as the path for the Democrats? Is it going to be the socialist? What is it? Democrat, socialist, the communist? Who is in line? Because now we're hearing talk about Kamala.
I think
Is
there's
that even
I think there's a
possible?
distinct possibility that she could be. I know it sounds ridiculous that she. I mean, I'm looking at the polling, and the reality is that among likely voters and Democrats, they like her. I know it sounds crazy.
It does sound crazy.
But they like her, and she's reached out to Mamdanistan recently to kiss the ring, and you know what? It just might happen.
Did
you
you
never
see
know.
Mom Johnny giving his speech sitting at George Washington's desk?
Except he was sitting on the wrong side
Other
of the
side.
desk, right? Yeah,
So you could see the gold.
It's fitting for somebody who's never held a job. You don't even,
Look, I mean, I know I love to bust his chops, but man, he's controlling that party.
He said, "I'm in charge."
He came in,
but there's a reason why Harris reached out to him.
And if you look at the Islamic plan and their playbook, Bill Federer does a great job on video about talking about the history of Islam. This fits right in, and it's timeless. They've done it in the past. When you look at Jordan, Syria, Egypt,
It's true.
and Lebanon, all used to be Christian nations. Now they're Islamic. And for all the people that think it's no big deal, go live over there.
And Kamala will go right along with it,
Go send your
won't
kids
she?
over there. Let your daughter and your wife go hang out over there and live there for a year. And then have your parades and have your protests and have you're not getting anything. This is what I'm saying. I mean, this is why this is not an issue of right versus left. This is an issue of America. This is truly an issue of America. I want to go back to debating my fellow Americans that disagree with me, but from an Islamic takeover like Mamdani is trying to do, and what they're actually doing, that they did in Dearborn, Michigan, and what's going to happen, and when you're seeing these people take office, and with this birthright citizenship, if you don't think someone like Mamdani, he's an American citizen too, right? He was born here or no? Was he?
He was born in Uganda, I think.
Okay, so he can't be president, thankfully. But don't think that they're not breeding someone like him. Think of a Mamdani being the United States president. You don't think that everything's going to change, that this country will fall? Because what they do next is they come after the guns. Then they come. There's a process to this.
It's not going to be a matter of years. It's going to be a matter of weeks.
Well, baby, look, this is 2-3 decades. Yep. That's nothing. And you don't think it's going to be accelerated when they take control, or if they take control? This is why, again, I get so frustrated when people that formerly supported Trump and quote unquote conservatives and Republicans and weren't ashamed to wear the hat. No one's wearing the hat anymore. How many Make America Great hats do you see?
I have not seen any.
I mean, it's almost
Not
like
in a
Build
long
Back Better.
time.
We ragged on Biden. Well, the criticism can come right back to us, and you have to ask why. And so again,
It could also be because people think the war is somehow won and Trump's in office, and that's a huge mistake to make.
Oh, no,
I mean,
that's
if
not part of it.
If you want to sit on your ass, good luck. Well, it's not like Republicans haven't sat on their asses before and assumed that everything was going to be fine now that Trump's in office. I can point to a few special elections where that wasn't the case. But look, I mean, let's remember. Seriously, it's not beyond Mamdani to leverage Kamala. No, not for her rhetorical skills, but for her intersectionality value.
For oral skills or rhetorical skills? I'm just asking.
You just
That's where she
I didn't
got
hear
here.
him.
That's how she got here.
I'm not saying that.
It's just so hard to have a decent program.
Too much anger. You were too angry, George. All right. Well,
I was going to say that black women are a formidable voting bloc and the most loyal Democrat constituency. That's all I'm saying, and they like her. So I wouldn't tune her out yet.
Before we wrap up, and I know that there's no answer to this, but I have to answer by asking you. Several people are saying, will there ever be another in-person show with you guys?
Yeah, eventually it will be. Yeah, I mean, I got a big trial coming up at the end of this month, and so I'm going to be laser focused on that, and that's going to be 2 or 3 weeks probably.
End of summer, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, the problem is if you say when, then it doesn't happen. I want to keep my word. So I don't know. It just depends. There's a lot of different things that have to come together for that to happen.
Everybody's excited. That's the only thing. Everybody is excited to do that again.
Well,
we got to get the club together in person.
We'll do it. Guys, have a blessed 4th of July, regardless of what tribe you're on. Celebrate it well, safely, of course. Be careful. And a lot of people partying out there and enjoying fireworks, which are great, but be careful with those as well. It's been kind of hot. And drinking, and drink responsibly, plan things out. But I really hope people can pause and man, just have the patriotism of that little Mexican boy for his country, for our country. Because the ideals of this country are good. The idea of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, that you can think what you want, say almost anything you want. I'm almost a free speech absolutist.
Blessing.
And then do what the country and the culture allows you to do, which is to go think big, to have wonder, and have an imagination, and go fulfill it, because you have the opportunities that anybody can have. And we have to preserve that. It's not going to come naturally. And there's people out there, even people that aren't Democrat really, that are just using the Democrats, that have a different idea and a different agenda. So I would hope and pray, my prayer and my advocacy is going to be for Democrats and Republicans, but true Democrats, not the new Democrat, the Socialists of America, which are not Democrats, as we said, come together and say, we need to preserve this wonderful experiment. Because if you think that this experiment is going to last another 250 years this way, it's just not. And that's not doom and gloom. That's just reality. Because if you study the history and what our founding fathers intended for this country, and how those ideas, they wanted to flourish to an educated populace and a virtuous populace, that we came around a set of ideas that we said, here's our rules of engagement towards each other and towards the culture. They had a contract with each other, a contract with America, a social contract, and then that allowed us to flourish. Freedom allows you to flourish. Freedom under the guise of e pluribus unum, out of many one. But the one is that we have this American values that we all share, celebrating our ethnicities. Here's a guy who's Portuguese from Angola, Africa, Lebanese, Mexican descent.
And don't you
Karen,
dare.
what are you?
I know.
Are
Don't
you-
rip me apart
what
like
are
you
you?
usually
Are
do.
you-
I'm everything.
A
You're
German.
Everything?
Yes.
Just German?
Yes. Well, it's Spanish also.
Espanol.
Yes.
Okay, well, any Spanish dudes interested, give us a
Spain
line.
and Germany. It sounds like the World Cup.
So just that's my hope, and that's actually my prayer for this country, because my children, God willing, will grow and have children. I hope to see that, my grandchildren, and I'm thinking like our founding fathers of my great grandchildren. And it doesn't take long for things to go to hell in a handbasket, so we have to preserve that on both sides of that. So have a blessed 4th of July celebration. God bless you. Enjoy your families. Bye-bye.